Now, going over to the political part of the podcast, you have Vivek on climate change getting near 900,000 views in 24 hours, which is pretty damn impressive. It's a little 3-minute clip. Now, and when it comes to the comments, I do appreciate the feedback. Still trying to find a software where we can do picture-in-picture in real production, and I appreciate any suggestions you might have. I've tried a couple, but the video keeps breaking down in terms of my webcam or the USB cam that I'm currently utilizing. I don't know if it's software capability differences or why, but still looking for a new solution. I appreciate your patience as we make the show better together. And if you have feedback, always appreciate if you have suggestions. And I am attempting to articulate and slow down my speech a little bit. And someday, perhaps, it will get better. And I'll be able to pontificate that much more accurately. We shall hope, and we shall see. Now, Vivek said, quote, 40 years ago, they told us an ice age was imminent. Now they tell us that global warming is an existential threat to humanity. Which is it? Neither. The climate change agenda is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate change and everything to do with global quote-unquote equity. By letting China catch up to the U.S., the same people who rail against carbon emissions in the U.S. don't say a peep about shifting those same emissions to China, while also opposing nuclear energy here at home. It's a farce, and I won't hedge in saying so. Unquote. So, some good points. I can't help but also notice no one ever brings up the big 500-pound elephant, or more accurately, the 500-pound panda in the room. It's China. They have more emissions than any other country, bar none. Coming second place is usually India. And yeah, they're not slowing down or kneecapping their economies in the sake of helping the environment. And it is also true, I talked to my parents about this, and fascinatingly enough, he is right. They were taught back when my parents were in school, back in the day, that an ice age was imminent. It's going to happen. So a couple interesting points. And also can't help but notice throughout the years when it comes to the climate change, it used to just be called global warming. That was the second. It used to be ice age. Then the next iteration that we heard about, or the next way they framed it, was this is going to be global warming, which they stopped using that because the world just didn't kept getting warmer exponentially. Turns out it kind of went up and down. It changes. So the new term is climate change, which is from political, moving on the political chessboard. That's brilliant because no matter what happens, their theory is right. Because change is happening. It's also an inevitable part of life. But in terms of if that's your idea, it's good framing. Now, this is a quick little interview he has with a ABC representative. And without too much further ado, I shall play.
The climate change policies we have adopted in this country have been more harmful and led to more deaths, both in the United States and worldwide, than climate change itself. It is a hard fact, Lindsay, that there's a 98% reduction in the climate disaster-related death rate over the last century because of more, not less, use of fossil fuels. 8 times as many people still die today of cold temperatures rather than warm ones. The right answer to all temperature-related deaths is more plentiful and abundant access to fossil fuels. The reason I called the climate change agenda a hoax is actually that it has very little, if anything, to do with climate change at all. And the way I can prove that to you is that the same people who oppose carbon emissions in the United States are perfectly fine shifting those same carbon emissions to places like China, where methane leakage, and methane's even worse for global warming than carbon dioxide, where methane leakage is worse in places like China. The same people who are opposed to fossil fuels are also opposed to nuclear energy, the greatest form of carbon-free energy production known to man, which I support.
Another thing about nuclear energy, I would argue it's 100% green. It's recyclable. The byproduct is depleted uranium rods, because they have the rods, go to the water. One of those rods, well, what is depleted uranium good for? Well, many things. One of the top things being military applications. They make tank busters, which is a military term for a tank cartridge in which you have the core of it being made out of depleted uranium, because depleted uranium is one of the most dense substances on the planet. So it's great for piercing armor. So if you have a tank, you take a round, the core of it is depleted uranium, you shoot another tank, and it'll go through their armor. So the military loves depleted uranium. There are a wide array for uses. That way you can make use of the whole, everything can be reused. And is ridiculously clean and efficient. It is a shame the United States has not invested more in that throughout the years.
Should also be my answer to that question. I'm the strongest and fiercest advocate for nuclear energy in either political party. But the reason I call the agenda a hoax is I think it's more about global equity, letting China catch up, using multinational institutions to allow China to catch up.
But let me just ask you this.
It is about the climate itself.
Let me ask you this really quickly. We understand how you feel about the climate change agenda, but what about climate change itself? Do you believe in climate change?
Well, I think that, with due respect, I've talked about this in other forums, do you believe in climate change is not really a meaningful question because climate change has existed as long as the Earth has existed.
Ooh.
Do I believe it is a fact that global surface temperatures are rising over the course of the last century and the last half century? Yes, I think that that is an established
And as
fact and
president,
trend.
would you do anything to try to buck that trend?
No is the answer. The thing I'm going to do is actually drive human adaptation and mastery of changes in the climate through technological advances. I think that requires more, not less use of fossil fuels, more, not less use of nuclear energy, finding ways of adapting to changing circumstances as human beings always have. That's how we advance human flourishing, human prosperity. That's the real metric that matters, not the amount of carbon we put into the atmosphere. And so, yes, I do care about human health, about human flourishing, about human prosperity. That's what I'm going to actually pledge to advance and lead. There are many risks. Climate is only one of them. There are many risks to human prosperity. And I think we need to focus more on, even in our environmental agenda, more on clean air and clean water and other basic attributes of making sure that human beings live healthy, meaningful, prosperous lives than just bending the knee to this one theory back in the 1970s said was going to lead to a global ice age, now says it's going to lead to global overheating. I think the reality is we need to focus on human prosperity. That's how I'll lead as Commander-in-Chief.
Brilliant board. Well, I'd say brilliant move on the political chessboard. I think a lot of people who are attracted to him as a political leader, they're going to like his answers to those questions. Now, another fascinating thing when it comes to the debate and the whole idea of climate change, I can't help but notice that people who advocate it for the most, the people who are the most fervent believers, they're out there 7 days a week. That is their thing. Why are they all buying houses off the coast of Florida while at the same time they're telling us it's going to be underwater in 7 years? Is it altruistic because they're so nice they want to be the first ones there so that when they see it, they'll warn us? Or is it because they're hypocritical and they don't really believe it? I'll let you decide on that note. Now, in terms of the feedback on the Twitter, or now it's called the X, you have a myriad of results. Now, it looks like one of the top ones is Mr. Bitnar, B-I-T-N-A-R. This person says, quote, "What about the fact that burning fossil fuel and coal destroys the atmosphere and our environment? It's just because it was the first source of energy and we figured out how to use. Now we have nuclear, solar, wind, hydroelectric. There are many other ways to achieve energy." They continue to say, "Sustainability without burning a limited resource that fills the air with smog. I enjoy Vivek and his policies, but this one is a little off the mark if he wants to continue burning dead dinosaurs." Which, I'll let you go ahead and just Google or look at the YouTube video for the man who coined the term fossil fuels. It's kind of fun to think of it as old dinosaurs, but not really. Now, another person says, replied to that saying, "What? Wharf plank? Wharf plank." All right. This person says, "It could take 20 to 30 years to go nuclear, and hydro is maxed out unless we can rebuild where the enviros forced the dam's closure in the past. So it's coal and natural gas until we change to nukes and hydro." That person got 20 likes, and subsequently the person before him got 34. We also have someone by the name of Great One, which seems to be a recurring commenter on the Vivek videos. Sorry, the Vivek. Though I really prefer his old rap term or his rap name when he was in college. He was called Davek. Which, if I were him, I'd lean into the meme and sell merch on that. Because I'm sure people would buy it. But nevertheless, you have the Great One saying, quote, "Vivek Ramaswamy speaks an inconvenient yet empowering truth. Today's climate agenda is a Trojan horse for global redistribution, divorced from environmental realities. Unlike cowardly politicians, Vivek demonstrates the intellect and courage to confront contradictions that reveal this fraud. If CO2 emissions allegedly threaten humanity, why ignore the much larger Chinese outputs? If nuclear power provides clean energy, why oppose it? Because it was never put about the climate. Vivek understands virtue signaling elites push climate changes policies undermining American interests while empowering adversaries. He seeks solutions that strengthen our nation, not weaken it, with wisdom and accountability. Ramaswamy leads the path to prudent environmental stewardship benefiting all people. We need leaders driven by timeless ideals, not political agendas disguising transfers of wealth and power. Vivek stands up for our sovereignty and future. Unquote. Quite a long tweet from Mr. Great One. I'll let you decide if those were great words. Now, it looks like on Twitter, some people did believe those were great words. He got 114 likes out of 2,648 views. Looks like going through another one by the name of Baldeep Durkot says, quote, Ice Age, global warming, and climate change, I can't keep up. Maybe we should try to turn the penguins into their expert opinion on this matters. They seem to know how to thrive in any weather. Unquote. Person got 9 likes and 2,000 views. So it looks like overall, another one saying, effort between you and you, saying, quote, America stand with Vivek. Got 8 likes. Bold move. So it looks like there are a couple negative against him. But it seems overall. Another popular response was from Rick Chiliotti, and he has quite the response. Now he says, quote, for all the climate alarmists out there and all those who think EVs will save the planet, I know you hate facts and numbers, but try to focus for just a few minutes. Let's look at some real numbers. CO2 makes up 0.04% of our atmosphere. Humans produce 3% to 4% of that CO2. What percent of atmospheric CO2 do humans produce? First, let's find 4% of 0.02. That's 4 divided by 100 times 0.02 divided by 100 equals 0.000008. Transportation, including planes, trains, trucks, and airplanes, is 49% of our 3 to 4%. I question this percentage, but I'll go along for now. Now you want to find 49% of the atmospheric CO2 produced by transportation. 0.000008 times 0.49 equals 0.0000392. So 4% of 0.02 is 0.000008, and 49% of 0.00008 is approximately 0.0000392. So transportation CO2 makes up 0.000392% of our atmosphere. If I separate automobile CO2, it becomes an unimaginably small number. By the way, CO2 has risen from 0.03% to 0.04% in the last 100 years. One more inconvenient fact is plant life starts to die off if CO2 gets below 0.02%. Unquote. Wow, I think I've said 0 more times than I can count today. 0. But nevertheless, this person got 131 likes out of 6,137 views. So quite a few people agreed with that sentiment. So it looks like overall, there are a couple that are against Vivek, but I would venture to say, a lot of the comments just saying, thank you, this is correct. Another person says hoax is accurate. Another one says music to our ears. Let's say probably about 93% of the comments are favorable towards Vivek's take on this particular situation or this particular comment. Now, that being said, in terms of moves on the political chessboard, I think this is a clever move for a couple of reasons. One is it does differentiate him from the myriad of competitors. There are, like many Republican primaries, there are more than you can possibly count. You could throw a brick out a window, you'll hit another Republican candidate. And presumably that wouldn't be a terrible idea, depending on who you hit. Kidding, obviously. But many would argue that brick would be more intelligent than some of the political candidates are running, and perhaps more morally accurate than many on the left and right. But nevertheless, I moderately digress. It does differentiate him from the competition. And I think that message resonates to a lot of people who they're noticing the differences between, again, the people who are advocating climate change and their actions, and they're just starting to question the situation more and more as they lose faith in government and the scientific community, as they've been taken advantage of throughout the years by those same communities. So I think this will resonate fairly good with people politically in the middle. I think people on the right, they're going to probably already agree with Vivek's take, and this might make it more attractive. You're not seeing, as of right now, of course, it's a very fluid situation. We got months into the election, but we haven't heard this type of messaging from DeSantis or Nikki Haley or Chris Christie. So it's definitely different. And again, I think if the U.S. really wants to be energy independent, go nuclear. And again, I think a lot of people are scared because, again, when there are the rare times that there are issues, it is catastrophic. Many would blame communism because, again, that's Chernobyl. And again, so perhaps nuclear would not be good in California with the current administration, the current people living there. But in other states that are more, have incentive structures for the private sector, it would be fantastically efficient. And yet, if you look at where the U.S. is investing in terms of energies, they're just kind of like when you go to a casino and you lose money on a slot machine and you think, well, I've already put $20 in here. I got to keep going. I'll win that 20 back. The sunk cost fallacy is a fascinating thing in business and many other areas of life. It seems as if the U.S. has that same addiction towards wind and solar, which, depending on where you are in the country, loses you a lot of money or sometimes breaks even. And the downside of wind energy is not very efficient. It's sure not green in terms of once the windmill is broken after 20 years, it's not exactly good materials that you're using. And when I say good, I mean the materials are not of which where you just bury it in the ground, bad things would happen. And with wind, their ROI, return on investment, is in the decades. So that's not great. In terms of solar, again, depending on where you live, might make sense. If you live in Oregon or somewhere where it's perpetually cloudy, that's a very imprudent idea. You're not going to get an ROI out of it. So again, I debated if it's even worth making solar panels. I would take that same money and invest it in solar panel technologies, and they've gotten more efficient throughout the years. Don't get me wrong. And in our lifetime, I suspect they will become even more efficient as technology gets better over time on average. But right now, it's still not the most efficient, especially when you need electricity for a city or on a large scale. It's one of those issues where right now, the best things for the environment, I would argue, are natural gas and nuclear. Now, I don't know how much, and again, one of the keys to prosperity in countries growing is cheap energy. Just think about how hard our lives get with the cost of gasoline getting more expensive and diesel getting more expensive. Not only is it more prohibitively expensive to go to work, go to the grocery store, go to your church, because you're driving to get there, but also the cost of goods. Trucks use diesel. I know a lot of people forget this, but pretty much everything you get at your store gets there by a truck. So that's another huge cost. So the older I get, the more I reminisce. I can't help but reflect and think of Thomas Sowell, who brilliantly once said, "There are no solutions, just trade-offs," which I can't help but see more and more in reality. But nevertheless, I believe in terms of moving on the political chessboard, brilliant move by Vivek. I think it will gain him a couple more votes in the middle, perhaps. And it'll be interesting to see. Let me know in the comments, do you think this will hurt him? Or do you think it will help him a little bit as a polls as he continues to fight to try to get the nominee for the Republican Party? Thank you again for taking the time to tune in. Again, I know it's ambitious, but we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of September. So if you could click that subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, all of the comments help the channel grow and develop, and the feedback is much appreciated, whether it's critiquing how I can improve my speaking abilities, or it's suggesting new software where we can do picture-in-picture in real-time production, so we could incorporate some of these clips into the production of the show as well. All the feedback is greatly appreciated. And of course, leaving a like also helps with the algorithm and gets more people to tune into the show, and it helps out as well. Also, and lastly, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.